All right, you want to bring up the agenda?
Oh, yeah, I forgot I logged out of that. I know.
All right. Good evening. Today is Wednesday, March 19th, 2025 at 6 p.m. We are in the Brecksville-Broadview Heights Education Center, 6638 Mill Road, Brecksville, Ohio. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. Public participation is governed by Board Bylaw 0169.1, public participation at board meetings. Following the regular meeting, the board will meet in executive session for the consideration of the appointment, employment, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official. Item A per board policy 0166 executive session. This meeting will be live streamed via YouTube and will also be recorded for later viewing. Please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel where all recordings are posted. Moving on to item 1B, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 1C, roll call.
Mrs. Gaelick?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Ms. Kwiatkowski?
Yes.
Ms. O'Mara?
Yes.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes. Moving on to item 2, President's announcements. Nothing really other than I know we've had a tremendous amount of success in winter extracurriculars across sports, and, robotics, and other areas. And so we are going to take our time and recognize all of our outstanding achievements at next month's meeting. So pay attention to that. We just wanted to make sure we could get invitations out and bring all of our fine students and their families in for some well-deserved recognition.
For our season ticket holders, the board meetings, we will be in a different location. We'll be at the high school, either between the media center or the auditorium. Still working on those details, but it'll be quite the gathering of students because there's quite a few to recognize. So the pressure's on to the admin not to miss anybody.
Yes, yes. Okay, so we look forward to that next meeting. Moving on to item 3, board areas of responsibility. Legislative OSBA liaison, Ellen.
I am going to defer my comments to a little bit later in the meeting because they relate to something else on the agenda.
Okay, Cuyahoga Valley Career Center.
Presentation was made by the principal at CVCC that introduced the consortium's 5-year plan covering the years from 25 to 29. Programs included the customized training program, which dealt with small equipment maintenance and repair. And this appears to be a really growing field, along with the HVAC situation that everybody seems to need workers for. The employer will be paying for such training. Parks and Environmental Resources was about to begin hiring, but the plan was put on hold because of the current political situation, and they have no idea whether they're going to have the $250,000 worth of funding to do this. And Revere will be participating in threat assessment for their bus safety training.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Quick update I'd like to add to that is tomorrow night at 7 o'clock is the Technical Honor Society program at the Career Center. So I'll be attending to support those students from BBH.
Very good. Moving on to curriculum, Tish.
Yeah, so exciting things going on in curriculum and instruction for the district. Last week, on the 4th, the curriculum instruction department, along with several staff members, our superintendent, have started work on career readiness, the career readiness initiative that is part of our new strategic plan. They are looking at having an instructional vision for 6th through 12th graders in career ed here in the district, doing and aligning work around that. So this work is just beginning, but it's very exciting, and we're getting a lot of people involved. So exciting work. And then the other thing I wanted to mention that I think like the general public might not know is, Dr. Martin and our instructional coaching staff in the district participate every month in this committee, this talk committee that is for all of Northeast Ohio curriculum instruction directors, coordinators, and they're able to get together and really dive into this work around curriculum in districts and network with each other, troubleshoot, problem solve, bounce ideas off each other. And I just think it's important that, the community know how our leadership works with other, throughout the county, other districts around the instruction that's going on in our district. That's all for me.
Great, thanks. Moving on to finance, myself and Tish. I know we just got the email from the Auditor of State. They concluded their audit and they'll be reviewing the findings. Was it March 24th?
Tomorrow.
Oh, it's tomorrow.
Yeah, it's
Tomorrow at 3.
Tomorrow at 3 o'clock.
Oh, okay. No, I was thinking
Yes.
March 24th. Yes, and so the findings, you want to talk about it all or do you?
Sure. So what they're gonna, it's still in draft form, but they conducted a very clean audit. They are having 3 recommendations. 2 of them are related to our food service program that we have, Pay Schools, and the Quick Lunch program. So 2 of those are, they're digging into like cybersecurity and things like that. So there's what's called a SOC 1 report and 2-factor authentication into the point of sale system that they would like to see schools do. So a lot of these, because Pay Schools is used by a lot of school districts, those are they're around. Basically, other districts are experiencing the same thing. Pay Schools is working on solutions for schools in order to meet compliance. So yeah.
So two of the flagged items were limitations of our software platform. and
Correct.
the vendor is working to plug those gaps.
Correct.
And then the other was a
So the third one-
fundraising that took place
Yeah.
prior to a form being filled out.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Fundraiser happened before the form was officially approved by the building administration. So yeah,
So is that just reminding people that work
It's-
on
yeah.
fundraisers? to
because
follow?
they pull more than one. So yeah, they pull multiple. And when they look at all the fundraisers, that was one of the issues. So we've made the appropriate communications to the buildings to make sure that they are not having that stuff happening before the approval has happened. So most of that does happen at the building level before it's sent down to one of my office staff. So yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, but
And-
overall, very clean. So
Overall, yeah.
These are minor items.
Yeah.
And I think, did you say next year you petitioned the state to switch back to
Independence.
an auditor?
Yeah, so most of this work has been done. The Auditor of State's office is very, very far behind due to some staffing, mostly staffing changes and promotions, whatever. So most of our work has been done since November. So it's been very frustrating for us to have to just wait this long to get the audits released. So the minimum they'll take us under is 2 years. Well, this is our 2nd year. So I did make the request to go back out to bid. The state will conduct that bid. They just actually sent me an email a couple hours ago to fill out some information, and then they do the actual RFP process and create a rubric and a whole RFP scenario for the different firms to apply. And then ultimately that's how the selection process happens. So next year we will have an independent public accountant. Last time we did this 2 years ago, it was with Ray and Associates, and it will be a minimum of 5 years. So we'll have a 5-year contract for whoever wins that bid process.
Okay, very good. Moving on to transportation, myself, all quiet on transportation. That's good news. Moving on to board policy, Lisa and Ellen.
There's just a few policies on the agenda tonight for final reading. There's, I think, 3 that have a first reading, and then there's some administrative guidelines we're updating. So we can talk about those maybe when we get to it on the agenda. We need to.
Yeah, they're eyeballs deep in policy.
Yeah, more to come.
Yes.
And there's a lot, so stay tuned. BBH Schools Foundation. Tish.
Yeah, just a quick update. The Schools Foundation had their big fundraiser on the 20th of February. For those that attended, it was a fantastic event. It's held at Michelangelo's this year, and we broke records. They had actually surpassed their fundraising goal before we ever stepped foot in the venue that night. But they made just under $38,000 So it was a very, very successful event, and they will, we're already looking forward to planning for next year. Two big things that are coming up for the foundation is the second week of April, they'll be sending their grant applications out to the teaching staff in the district for those that want to apply. Those will be open until the end of the year, and that is what those fundraising dollars go towards, is providing classroom grants to our teaching staff to provide really unique and robust and enriched learning opportunities for our students. And they did have two teachers that spoke that were grant winners of last year at the event in February. They did a very nice job talking about how the BBH Schools Foundation support allows them to enhance their instruction. And then the other thing that's happening with the foundation is they did vote. They will be again providing at least 30 standalone scholarships to our seniors coming up at Senior Awards Night. And that's just the Schools Foundation. They also have about 30 named scholarships for families that have a named scholarship that is sustained year after year after year for our students. So exciting things. We'll continue to support our kids as they move on to become alumni with us and go on to their next steps. And that's it for the Schools Foundation.
Great, thanks. Moving on to safety, Ava and Lisa.
There's no update unless you
I've got
have.
nothing.
The only thing is, I know, Mr. Harrison, you mentioned Centegix is going to do a presentation here, like a demonstration of our system for other districts.
Yes, so I would invite you on Friday from 1 to 3. Centegix representatives from Centegix will be here in the high school cafeteria. We have welcoming, 3 to 6 different school districts surrounding us that have an interest in it to come and see it in action. It's a professional development day, so there's no students in the building, but they'll actually get to see the functionality of the system. So if many of you haven't been in a building when it's gone off, and hopefully we never go off when it's the crisis alert, but you also will get to see the staff alert and then the crisis alert, and how it'll take over the screens and the strobes will blink and all of that. So if you're bored on a Friday afternoon at 1 o'clock, feel free to stop by. We get nothing out of this. It was very clear with other superintendents. We invited them. Centegix has asked if we would host it because our system is up and running, and we were happy to because we see the value in it. And I've had many superintendents reach out to me asking me about it, so we just decided, come on in.
Very good. Moving on to sustainability, Ava and Ellen.
I had a quick update from the elementary school. Apparently last week they did their 3rd annual book swap, which the theme is swap, don't shop. And they had 6,000 books that were donated and distributed among the students, which I thought was pretty impressive. And they're now gearing up for Earth Week, which is the week of April 20th. And it looks like they're going to have all kinds of really amazing events that week at the elementary school. And they're still working on recycling glue bottles, glue sticks, pens, colored markers through that TerraCycle program. And then lastly, I thought this was interesting, that PSO sustainability team is now in charge of the lost and found at the elementary school. So sounds like they're very active over there.
The lost and found looks like a TJ Maxx. So building with 1,700 students, they have it on display on the wall. They got them filling my clothespins. We were there the other day, and I'm just like, it's really amazing at the amount of stuff.
They have volunteers that come in and sort through everything. And then I walked past the other day and there's just gloves, clothespin to the wall so that you could identify your gloves more easily. And people take pictures of the nicer items like coats and shirts, and then they post them online, and it's the amount of volunteer work that's going into it so people can get their things back.
I would hope eventually we could convince the parents that putting the names into all of these objects really would help.
Yeah.
And we tried because kids forget, just leave things out and they forget to put them back on.
Yeah, adults forget too.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, very good. PSO, Lisa.
The PSO units, all the units are in the process of nominating executive board officers, and each unit is also looking for additional volunteers, so some on the executive board and some on their committees. So if that's something you're interested in, you can reach out to the PSO presidents at your child's school. The high school PSO is working to plan after prom, and that'll be on April 26th at 10:30, so after the prom, obviously. That event's going to take place at the Brecksville Rec Center this year. It's going to have games, food, prizes, and their PSO is also asking for donations of prizes. So that's something you can reach out to the high school PSO presidents. And just a plug for the event. I know they're trying to get more students to come to it. I know in the past few years there hasn't been that many students there, so they're trying to build it up and make it a really nice event for the kids, and also a safe event that they can be at after prom and be together and just have a great time. So they're putting a lot of work into it, and I appreciate them. Middle school PSO hosted their musical Mary Poppins, and that was this last weekend, March 15th and 16th. I don't know if people know, but that musical is totally planned by the PSO and organized by them, so that the middle school students there have the opportunity to to be part of a musical. So that's also a really nice event. I didn't get to go this year, unfortunately, sadly, but yeah, I'm sure it was great. It always is. Okay, thank you. And then the elementary school PSO, they had their Coin Wars fundraiser, and they raised over $6,000. The money from that fundraiser is earmarked to purchase books and media resources. And if you don't know what the Coin Wars fundraiser is, basically the entire week, the PSO just asks families to send in coins. So the first day is pennies, then it's nickels, then it's dimes, quarters, and so on. And yeah, they raised $6,000 that way. And they count up all the money by grade to see which grade has the most money. And it was second grade raised $2,300, just their class alone. So
Maybe the bubble class, they may have an unfair advantage.
yeah. Well, that's what, yeah, they're the biggest class, and every year they won. I think they won in kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, so they're just winning. But
I got about 40 more kids in the
Yeah.
class.
But the PSO president said they also broke it down by student, and they're by far. So that class is just very excited and very motivated and really loves to help our district. So, and the next PSO council meeting is Thursday, April 3rd at 9:30, and it's always in this room. And I just wanted to say thank you to the PSO council and the PSO units. They shared some information with our residents about how to reach out to our legislators about the state budget and funding for public education. So I appreciate them sharing that message with our parents. Thanks.
Thank you. Moving on to co-curricular, extracurricular, Tish and Lisa.
Nothing really. We have a couple items on the agenda for trips for a couple of our athletic teams. So we'll be looking at that tonight.
Mhm.
Okay, permanent improvement facilities, myself and Ellen. I know later on the agenda, we have a contract to redo the last big portion of the roof at the middle school. And so that's probably the biggest thing, other than also,
We got one a little bit bigger.
well,
Maybe.
So yeah, maybe no. We had a meeting today with ABG. I've talked about the planning commission meeting, which I will here shortly, but not to spoil it, I'll be communicating with the board on possibly setting up a work session. I think it would probably be best for us to have a work session to go over the different phases of the campus master plan and the rough estimate of numbers of what each phase would cost and what type of funding would be required to move forward with any of the pieces if we so choose. So we have that information. Craig and I and Brian Koss met with them today. So we're ready to kind of lay that out a little bit more for the board. You've been involved all along, but this meeting we just dedicate to that so we can really dig into it. And then other than that, if you notice, they're taking the floors out at Hilton the past couple of days.
I saw that.
I have zero experience at tearing a building down, but that company that's doing that work, I would hire them for just about anything. The way they've gone about it, just today I was watching, they had their men walking the fence line with trash bags, picking up trash that was stuck up against the fence. And it may or may not have been from the demolition. It could have just been from the winter and blowing around, but they just have, it seems that they've gone the extra step on each piece of this. So they've done a nice job.
Good. And of course, we're also on track to put the new drive-in.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in the planning commission. Yes, yes. If you're looking for information, this was the board meeting to come. Felt like that for the past couple of weeks as we were preparing for this.
Okay, well, to that end, we're going to move on to item 4, superintendent's communications. I'll turn it over to Jeff to walk us through a number of updates.
Yeah, and I just had to kind of keep it short, and then I even wrote a couple down that I'll share too. So I'll keep some of these short. Some will be brief. The first one is just about the student successes. I'm blown away every single day that I get the opportunity to work in the school district to see the wonderful things that our students are doing. And many a times we focus on athletics because it's in the newspaper and it's easy for people to rally around a team than a math class, you know, so people get emotional, excited about athletics, which is great. But our robotics program, I mean, you guys saw it. We have like 50 kids going to Worlds. Like that's like unheard of. Or 2 of our teams are competing against each other for the state championship, you know, and if you've never been involved with robotics, you've got to give it, you have to go to one, because if you go to one of those events, it will just change your complete outlook on it. And it will also change your complete outlook on what you may or may not think about this generation of children. It's simply amazing. The teamwork, the collaboration, the critical thinking, all the 21st century skills that Dr. Martin talks about us wanting to embed into our students is happening through robotics, as well as many other programs. I did get to see a little bit of Mary Poppins the other day during the senior citizen matinee, which was really, really cool. And those kids were excited, and it's amazing. I have 0 talent in the arts, absolutely 0. So to watch them do their thing is really, really special. Item 2, and we, as Mr. Dosen said, in April's board meeting, we'll be recognizing many of those student athletes. I mean, our gymnastics team, I mean, really, I mean, 22 years in a row. But what's so special about that when I was there watching is the way they go about their business. They are the class, the grace, they're there to do a job, and they do it well. And I'm watching other teams, and you can see these kids are nervous, and I understand why they would be nervous. Our girls, it's like ice in their veins, and it's quite impressive. So proud of them. Wrestling team, I mean, continues to do great things. A number of kids have qualified for the state tournament. So I don't mean to miss anybody, but we do need to get out of here at some time tonight. So I'll stop now and just let you know in April, we'll be recognizing all those student athletes. Planning Commission meeting, myself and our team from AVG and Brian Koss went to the Planning Commission meeting last month, or this past month, for the date now, but in the past couple of weeks. It went very well. We want to continue to strive to be good neighbors. Obviously, when we talk about the new Hilton driveway, it is on private property, so we don't necessarily have to follow some of the regulations we would have to follow if it was, you know, a public road or a public improvement. But we've gone the extra step to make sure that what we're doing, we continue to be good neighbors with our friends at the Chippewa Hills Homeowners Association, other residents on Mill Road. So we went to the Planning Commission just so that there's no surprises, kind of gave them an overview of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and then also some of the details, which then they provided us with feedback, which today's meeting, we kind of solidified some of the changes that we were going to make. They were minor, enlarging the roundabout that would be behind this building, just so we make sure fire trucks and school buses and everybody can get around it with no problem. Also, we took into consideration additional changes to the lighting plan along this driveway. So to alleviate some of the concerns of the homeowners association on that side. I do want to stress that the lights that would be put in are your old style lights that just flood it with light. It's very directional light. It's LED. It is dimmable. It is programmable. We will find a way to come to some type of agreement or understanding with homeowner association so it does not impede on their property, and we will continue to do that. It was nice that 2 members from that homeowner association came to the Planning Commission meeting. I invited them to come, and they came, and they spoke very highly of the school district and the job that we have done as a district to communicate with them, to listen to their concerns and make adjustments to it. So that was very positive experience. So we have to go back to the next one to get a preliminary approval. Then we can really do the detailed drawings. And then we have to go back again to get final approval and then go out to bid. So at this point, rough estimate, be bidding May-ish, June-ish, shovels in the ground. Hopefully it can be done by the end of October. So that's kind of the time frame we're looking at, is hopefully before the snow flies and before they quit cooking asphalt for the season, which is typically in November. Hopefully we have the driveway in and it's open and operational. So it's moving right along. District website update, I'll just have, if Craig doesn't mind, just flip open to the tab. Board, I've sent you this link. This is the new website. It's still in draft format. It is, if you go to bbh.org, it does not take you to this website. It takes you to the old one. Right now, we're running two websites parallel with one another. So an update's made on the old one, and we also make it on the new one. I have to send a shout out to Gabe Post, who is an employee of Jim Crooks and JC Power, who's our communications team. He has done a lot of heavy lifting on this project, and I appreciate the work and the detail he's put into it. There are still things that aren't active on here, and some of the links aren't quite right, and some of the navigation's still being adjusted. The idea is this will go live or start to go live on March 24th, which is next week. And that's a couple-hour process. It's not just like a switch. It's so they'll start it, and over the course of the day, all the links will go there. The thing that I want to stress to individuals is this website, no matter what device you look at it, either on a computer, on your iPhone, on Android, on your iPad, whatever, the website adjusts to whatever the devices you're using. So I would tell you, it has a similar look. It doesn't change it radically, but it's very nice. And that's something that our current website just doesn't quite have. As well as after the website goes live, towards the end of April, we will then launch the app. So you'll be able to download an app onto your phone, which will function and take you to certain things off the website. The website feeds the app, but makes it very user-friendly. So there will be an app coming out towards the end of April that's part of this whole process. So new look, refreshed look, just still, it's a work in progress. We got the 4 blue ribbon awards across the bottom of that footer there, just recognizing that those awards we've had. So as it goes live, we'll probably have a pop-up window that comes up and says, please bear with us, under construction to a degree, and also give people an opportunity to say, hey, we still can't find XYZ, and maybe we can change some of the navigation. So more to come on that, but wanted to give you kind of a sneak peek.
Jeff, just real quick on the website. So does that also entail retraining of any staff to post updates?
Yeah, we have one person in each building that kind of serves as the webmaster or the person who updates building specific information. Gabe and JC Power does a lot of the updating of the website, but there is an individual in each building, and we have been giving them videos and time, and they've been learning to do it along the way with Gabe. So there's Final Site, who is the company behind this, has an extensive library of different training materials that we've made available to them. But we don't train the whole staff. Not every staff member needs to be trained on it. And one thing that we are going to be investigating too, that kind of goes along with the website, is there is a product out there called School Intercom, where we can have ambassadors, like students, for example, who can create web content, social media posts, and all of that like they normally would. And they hit submit, and it comes to an administrator to approve it. So it puts the power into our staff and our students to share the wonderful things happening in their classrooms and things like that. But we still have a little bit of control because we all know that we work with teenagers every day. So there's things like that we're trying to improve upon. This, again, is yet another thing that I'll tell you is embedded in the strategic plan. This was a major piece of it, that we want to improve communications, make things more accessible, and just have a nice looking product. All right. So that's the website. Kindergarten registration update. We are at 219 today as far as register for kindergarten. We're kind of on pace of where we always are. We're anticipating being in, being that 220-ish number, but we shall see. I do have one family in particular who has petitioned me to allow their child to enroll early because of where the birthday falls with the date change of that. So we're working through that process. There's board policy that speaks to that. So we will continue to go through that process and see if it's appropriate or not. So we're right on on pace. Tennis court update. I wish I had wonderful things to say about tennis court update, but I can tell you that our courts are still failing in the areas that we've identified, and we have another spot that is beginning to crack. So we have PSI who did core samples for us of the asphalt. He's going to come out and take the same core sample, go in the same hole basically, and go deeper into the base. I've been working with David Riley, had a phone call with him today, that once we get that core sample done of the base, then that will direct where we're going to go with this. We will make the repairs necessary. It's going to come down to who's responsible for those repairs and how we will work with the vendor who installed the tennis courts that are failing way before they should be failing. Said company has not been responsive of late. You know, they have been responsive in the past. So we shall see where this goes, but this is back on the front burner because the repairs that need to be made will need to be made between the boys season, which is right now, and the girls season, which starts into July, beginning of August. So if the repairs can't be made in that amount of time, then we're going to have to go after the girls season, which usually ends early October, and then has to be done before they stop cooking asphalt, as I said earlier about the road. So those are the two windows of time, because the last thing we want to do is displace our student athletes and teams again for fixing the tennis courts. So we're on a tight time frame, but we met on the courts yesterday with the individuals involved. So we'll have more information in the coming weeks.
And part of the reason behind that meeting was to develop the plan of the fix, regardless of how the company is going to interplay.
Correct.
So that's why we're able to do this hopefully in a tight time frame, because they're already going to start working on the plan as soon as PSI gets those core samples done.
Mill Road construction. If you don't know, the bridge across 77 is going to be taken out of commission for upwards of a year. They have installed a temporary light at Lacey Lane and Mill Road because traffic will be rerouted due to that construction. Brian Wolf, councilman for Broadview Heights, continues to keep us updated. The City of Broadview Heights Engineering Department will be holding an information session on March 31st from 5 to 7 p.m. at City Hall in council chambers. It'll be open to any residents who have questions or concerns regarding the Wallings Road Bridge project. So it obviously is going to affect people. It's going to affect employees. It's going to affect parents, our buses, and all the like. So hopefully we're going to be able to navigate this and still get to school on time every day. So that's that one. Before I get to the last one, which is state funding, I want two additional bonus ones. Just so you know, we hosted Twinsburg City Schools and about 40 of their employees 2 nights ago at the elementary building. They're considering building a consolidated elementary building. And I'm sure as it was here, some of their staff is having a tough time conceptualizing what a building of that size is like and how it functions. So the superintendent, business director, and many teachers were there. Colleen, Chris Hartland, Tina McCauley, and myself gave tours, gave feedback, talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly through the process. And I think it was extremely beneficial for them. We've gone one step further because you never know when we may need a favor. So when you're asked of a favor of another school district, I'm always willing to do it. We're hosting 3 open houses the next couple of weeks for interested community members from Twinsburg to come and view the building as well. Kathy Powers, who is the superintendent there, obviously was an employee here. So there's been a relationship, and I felt as though, we'd show off our wonderful building. So we'll see. She doesn't know how many community members are going to come. There's an RSVP process, but if you hear we have visitors in that building in the evenings, that's what's happening. It's not during the day, it's during the evening. Last one that isn't on here, and then we'll get to number 7. Myself, Dr. Martin, and Scott Kinkoff, our instructional coach, have the wonderful opportunity of going to a professional development session in April 5, 6, 7. So it's over a weekend, just happens to be in San Diego. But it's being grant paid for. The Martha Holdens Jennings Foundation has provided funding for us to go. I am using some other additional professional development dollars because the grant was for me to go, but I can't take in the amount of information that's going to be at the show. There's over 140 learning sessions on Saturday and Sunday. This show is like the leading show in the country, if not the world, on AI and education. So there's 140 learning sessions and over 500 professionals that will have speaking sessions and breakout sessions. So Dr. Martin, Scott Kinkoff, where does this fall in and why would we go to something like this? Number one, grant funding is helping pay for it. That's the most important fact that I want to state over and over again. Martha Holdings Jennings Foundation. That grant was made possible through my participation in the Dream Team Initiative and the group of superintendents that I participate with. And then this all ties into our strategic plan and with career readiness, as Tish was talking about earlier. We need to embrace AI. We do not need to take the road of it's bad, it's bad, it's bad, and try to ban it, try to block it and all of that. As a school district, it is a benefit to our students to teach them how to use it appropriately. And who would ever think that prompt engineering would be a career one day? Right? So we want our students to leave our school district with the ability to interact in the business world or whatever world they go into with the skills necessary. This will help build that program for us, and we're excited to go. We're excited to see what's going on. AI will be a huge push for us this summer with professional development, as well as an initiative next year with full staff. So there'll be a lot to come there. I just want to make you aware that we are going on that trip, and we hope to bring back lots of information to share with us. He doesn't know it, but I'm probably going to ask Scott Kinkoff to do a presentation at the board meeting afterwards to share this information that we gathered. Last one. Craig and I decided, I don't know, sometime yesterday that we need to have a conversation about the proposed state budget. And he and I said, we need to throw some type of little presentation together so that we don't get onto a soapbox and go down a rabbit hole and forget what we're talking about. So he and I, through the use of some AI, right, created this presentation just to guide the conversation. So Craig and I felt as though we'll go through some information, and then we want to just open it up and have some conversation. So I'll let you kick off. I told Craig he's the play-by-play and I'm the color analyst. I had to explain to him what that
He had to
meant.
explain to me what that was. So anyway, just goes to show how wonderfully young I am, right?
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, I think it's important to, as we talk about the Ohio State budget impact on the district, is that it is still, and we've kind of expressed this to the board as well, because we get a lot of questions, is that it's still very early in the process, because you've got the House, well, you got the governor's proposal, then it goes to the House, then it goes to the Senate, and most likely it's going to go to a conference committee at the end, which is where things get really wild in the Ohio State legislature. So one of the things was I put together a little timeline, which talks about the amendment deadline for the House was on March 14th. The House is going to release its budget somewhere between April 1st, April 9th. You do have the Senate Finance Committee hearings are going to do public testimony and mostly through April and May. And then in June, middle of June, they're going to have their final budget from the Senate, in which case, if they don't agree, it's going to go to, if they don't just pass what the House has passed, it's going to go to a conference committee where things get added and subtracted very quickly to meet the July 1st deadline. So it has to be passed by the end of like June 30th at midnight. So that is the process that we have. And again, we're only dealing with one part of the legislature right now. So it's important to realize that it's very, very early. When the Senate comes out, they will also have additional simulations that come out for school districts. So far, it looks like our district isn't necessarily harmed, but I don't want to say that in a way that like we're to the positive. There are some neighboring districts that are to the negative based off of what this plan looks like. So even though it's to the positive, it still is not, it's not a very large amount for our district in terms of state funding. And we'll kind of talk about what the state's share of this is in the end. So we do have, all of this ties back basically to what happens to the local taxpayer at the end of the day. And so our last levy that we had for operational funds was in 2017. 2018 was the bond passage for the new elementary school. And then obviously we're looking at this year being in a deficit spending and to figure out what that looks like for our future levy history. So the future needs are possibly coupled in that other conversation we'll have about campus master plan, but also the operational needs of the district. Because as you know, once you start deficit spending, it is very difficult to get out of, and you've got to do the best that you can. But at the same time, it's going to eventually catch up to us where we will need to cyclically have additional operating money. And when the state contributes less to that, it happens to the taxpayers earlier. So overall, right now, the state budget projections indicate that it would be a total $103.4 million reduction into public education statewide. It does increase funding for voucher expansion, so there would be additional money allocated to vouchers. We've seen unprecedented rising property values, which affects our local funding contribution requirements based on the funding formula. But it's also important to note that Ohio still continues to have declining enrollment statewide. It is a gradual but slow, steady decline. And there's a bunch of reasons. One of that is that people are moving out of the state of Ohio. The total population is continuing to shrink and decrease, but it's also that people are having less kids because it's very expensive to have children these days, right? So there's a bunch of factors of why our population and our birth rates are low, but that is a statewide issue. And there are very few pockets in Ohio where that's not the case. And again, like I said, voucher expansion would be hundreds of millions of dollars in additional money for vouchers when we look at what's been projected. So when we look at what the impact is for us, is that our direct operating impacts are that we're not immune to inflation. I think we've done a pretty good job of controlling our inflation. We did a really good job for the first couple of years when we've seen record inflation. And last year was the first year we really kind of saw some of that. But if you recall, we've done in the building consolidation and all of that, we were able to keep our overall expenditures well below the inflationary lines, with the exception of last year. And we'll see once we finish this year where that number comes in terms of increased cost for total expenditures and what that percentage looks like. The major issue that we see, in the part we will continue to advocate for, and I have a slide coming up about talking about the outdated base cost inputs. So the current funding calculations are remaining based off of the FY22 inputs. And so the funding formula only works if you're going to do the full phase-in and you're going to increase the base cost inputs. But more importantly, what are base cost inputs? The way the formula was constructed is that there is a specific set of rules saying, based on your size of your district, how many superintendents do you need, right? It's one. How many treasurers? One. How many principals do you need? How many counselors do you need? How many health or nurses do you need? How many media specialists, specials? All of that is all calculated. And if you're using salary and benefit data from fiscal 22, which really is 3 years ago at this point almost, those numbers are very different than what they are today. But in the meantime, you're using the updated costs of what our property values are. So what that's doing is it's shifting everything even more to the local funding burden on the districts, and the most likely for us, it's the residential property owners. So 83%, just as a reminder, of our funding comes from our local real estate taxes, with only 17% coming from state sources. And of that 83%, as we've talked about House Bill 126, we have shifted our property taxes from commercial property taxes to residential property taxes. So if you see the trend, we are continuing to put a larger tax burden through our policies and our legislation in the state of Ohio onto residential property tax. The state is paying less.
And one point I want to make about this, about the base cost, is you will hear Governor DeWine say over and over again, we are fully phasing in the Fair School Funding Plan. That is an accurate statement, but what's not accurate about that statement, or the whole truth, is they're not updating the base costs. So you're phasing in the Fair School Funding Plan in a way where it wasn't meant to be done that way. So the tagline or the headline says, Fair School Funding Plan being completely phased in. However, the base costs are not. So that's where the rub is with the governor's proposal with the Fair School Funding Plan. And I wish you could move that green bar, but Ohio ranks 35th in the so Ohio ranks 35th nationally in state level funding for public schools. So Ohio talks about wanting to be the heart of it all and continue to develop and develop and develop and bring in all kinds of industry in our state, which is a great thing. And we want to produce students to be able to fill those openings, but we fund public schools 35th in the nation. So that's an interesting fact to remember.
Yeah. And I know that my tagline is that really it's a tax increase. And I know that's what legislators don't want to hear, because we want to be reducing taxes. But what the residents and the people who are living in homes throughout the state is that this will result in a tax increase on our property owners.
And that's not a threat. That's just the fact.
It's just how it works.
There'll be so many representatives from time to time that say it's awful that schools go to their community for levies to fund schools, and you continue to go for levy after levy after levy. What they're doing right here is essentially shifting the burden from the state to the resident, and that's a tax increase, no matter which way you cut it.
So this next slide, I actually got this from OASBO, and it's like, why is the updating base cost so important? So this directly shows you, as we've gone through the funding formula, and you can see in a profound way that when we moved to the new biennium and we did update the base cost of fiscal 22, we saw the number of schools on the guarantee reduce. So that's why you see that large drastic number for fiscal 24. Well, the problem is now look what happens in fiscal 25, because we're still using base cost of 22 for fiscal 25. We've seen almost 40 additional schools go on to the funding guarantee. So when you don't update the base cost every year, you push more and more districts on the guarantee. So let's go back to the governor's proposal. We're going to reduce the amount of money for the guarantee. So it's getting us one way or the other. And the answer is just to fully fund the formula and continually just update the base cost. It'll be a year behind, but you can continually update the base cost. And so you can see very easily by the number of schools that just from 24 to 25, when you've kept the base cost steady, how many schools have now moved from, to be on the guarantee?
When they're on the guarantee, and Craig, please correct me or add the info here to better explain it. But when a school is on the guarantee, that's when governor or any representative saying we're paying for empty seats, right? I mean, essentially that's what, when you hear them say, we are no longer going to pay for empty seats in a district, they're referring to districts that have fallen onto the guarantee. I don't know if you want to explain the guarantee a little bit more.
Well, so the guarantee is just saying that you're not going to receive less money than you did before, right? So when they say funding empty seats, sometimes there are schools that that they've had declining enrollment for certain reasons, and so that's what they're claiming are empty seats. It's not like they're really funding those people. Those districts would be completely devastated without the guarantee. We, as a district, for the first time in probably over a decade, just came off of one of these guarantees, and we were like hanging on the formula by the skin of our teeth. Continuing to fully phase in and update the base cost inputs keeps us off of the guarantee. The funding formula should work. It's not going to be perfect. They realize it's not perfect, and the work group is still continuing to work on this. But it's important to note that before the Fair School Funding Plan was in place, over 500 school districts were on the guarantee before they changed all of this. So you can see that it has gone through a process to get more and more schools off of the guarantee and to properly fund it. But what's most important is that you can see right there at the bottom, fiscal 24 to fiscal 25, the state share as a whole has dropped from 44% to 39%. If you leave the base costs at fiscal 22, in fiscal 26, you will see that number drop to 34 to 35%. So you talk about what the role of the state was always trying to at least balance a 50-50 partnership with property taxes. So that we should be, the local would pay 50% and the state would pay 50%. And we're seeing that, again, by not dropping or not moving the base costs, you see that portion of what the state has funded continues to decrease. This is just another piece of just the uncertainty that we have to deal with, and it's maybe my own soapbox, but just keep in mind that we talk about all this budgeting process. So we're required by state law to do a 5-year forecast, and at some point we are working across 3 different biennium budgets, 2 of which we definitely don't know anything about. So we have this, it makes planning the resources and what we're going to do as a district incredibly difficult when you don't know what your state legislature is going to do, by them continuing to keep the Fair School Funding Plan in flux. They want to continue to keep it as a part of the biennium budget instead of just actually putting it into law. If districts could plan accordingly, if this stuff was actually fully into law, it would help us plan better when we look at our 5-year forecast and other requirements that we have as school districts. So it's hard for people to wrap their mind around, but it's difficult to plan when you just don't know. And we're just saying we're taking our best guess, and that's really what we're doing, and hoping things that maybe stay the same. Like, we don't know.
So let's go to the fun conversation in all this, and it's the voucher program and the reality of the voucher program. Vouchers are not new. Vouchers have been around for some time. The original intent of those vouchers were to allow students of low-income families to what they would say is to escape failing schools. That was initially what it was, and it started in the city of Cleveland. It was vouchers to go to those families to be able to choose a different educational venue for their son or daughter. That's how it started. The current usage is nowhere near that. And we have a graph that we're going to show you that pertains just to our school district, and it is glaring as to this is not the voucher system as it was once designed, is not being used in that fashion at all. Schools of our public schools, we have 89% of the students in the state of Ohio attend a public school. 89% of students in the state of Ohio attend a public school. Okay, schools of choice, you could call them what they are. They could be private schools, they could be charter schools, whatever they may be. 11% of the students in the state attend a private or charter school, or you'll hear me say a school of choice. So public money requires transparency and accountability. That's something I want people to take away from this conversation. Brecksville, Broadview Heights is not afraid to compete. We have a product and we have a community that supports our school district to allow us to do the wonderful things we do. We will compete with anyone. What is very alarming is the amount of public money that leaves our state and goes to charter schools through the voucher system with zero transparency and accountability. They don't have to do the same things we do. And, you know, as I listened to the governor's State of the State address talking about completely banning cell phones, I think, how much is that going to cost us as a district to implement something like that? Adding in additional Ohio history lessons, or having additional requirements for the science of reading, and all these things that are very good for education. However, they cost money. And so at the same time, you want to put these requirements upon us, but you'll send $1 billion through vouchers to these schools of choice where they have zero accountability. They don't have to follow the same rules we do. They don't have to be as transparent as we do. I joked with PSO the other day. All right. The transparency in a public school system, I said to PSO, I said, you want to read my email? All you do is send a simple email to Craig and you can have all my emails. You can read them all.
Please don't do that.
Because, yeah, please don't do that. Not because of what's in the email. It's the additional work for Craig. But my point being is we are held to such a standard because we have the community's most two precious commodities. Their children. I don't mean to call them commodities, but you know what I'm saying. Their children and their tax dollars. So we are held to a high standard, and that is okay. We are okay with that. We operate in a very transparent way. But this $1 billion that is going to these schools of choice have zero transparency and zero accountability. As I know many of you have read this past week, Steve Dyer put out an article talking about students who left public schools and went to charter schools and how their academic progress has declined over a 2 and 3 year time. We will compete with anyone. I could say and argue, and I know it's a silly argument, but give me the voucher money that you give to families to go elsewhere. Give it to us because it would be a heck of a lot more money than the state gives us now. So, you know, that's my soapbox that I go a little bit too far on. That's why we did the presentation, because it's time for me to move on to the next slide, Craig.
Okay.
Which doesn't help my soapbox, I don't think. But so misconceptions about vouchers. It's not just for underperforming schools. Vouchers are now available regardless of your home district quality. Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos would qualify for a voucher in the state of Ohio. So think about that for a second. If vouchers were originally created for low-income families to escape failing schools, but now we have a voucher system that would make Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos eligible for a voucher. Now it's a sliding scale. The more household income you have, the lower the voucher is. And I think the lowest amount of a voucher is like $650
For elementary school.
for elementary school. The highest amount on a voucher is upwards of $8,000 for a high school student. But the point being is they are now available to all, not limited to low income. Selective admission. Some of these private schools can reject students, unlike public schools. We have to educate, and we welcome every student that shows up on our doorstep into our classrooms. Private schools and charter schools do not have to do that. They can be selective. They have criteria. They don't have to follow by the same rules we do. And unfunded mandates. The policy we're about to prove here shortly is full of unfunded mandates and requirements that we have to follow because we get state and federal funding. These private schools and charter schools now get state funding, and they don't have to follow the same rules we have to. So that's what I talk about, leveling that playing field. So this chart, if you're not already upset, this chart will do it for you. So this data in this chart is Brecksville Broadview Heights data. This isn't statewide. This isn't nationwide. This isn't Independence or North Royalton. This is us. And you'll see across the bottom is 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025. In the year 2022, we had a total of, my eyes are getting to that point, I'm gonna come over here, 18 low-income families who took advantage of the voucher program. And as you fast forward to 2024, we have 27, but the orange line is the increase, the ed choice increase in the voucher system. So the orange line in 2024, we had 297 families take advantage of the Ed Choice Scholarship. And again, not every student or family got the same dollar amount. It's a sliding scale. And then in 2025, 402 families took advantage of the Ed Choice voucher program. But look at that line above that. That's our average daily enrollment, okay, or membership as they call it. In 2024, we were 3,435 students. Well, if we had 297 students take the voucher, would you think that we lost 297 students? No. We didn't at all. When you go from 24 to 25, we actually lost 34 students. So 402 are taking the Ed Voucher program in 2025. 402 students, and our enrollment in our school district dropped by 34 students. So what does that tell us? It tells us that families who had already chosen an alternative education for their child, which they have every right to do. I have 2 children. I should have the ability to choose where my son or daughter would go to school. That's up to myself and my wife to make that choice. 402 families, upwards of 400 families, were making that choice. They were making that choice before the voucher program, but now they're taking advantage of the vouchers because some of the schools of choice are making it a requirement for families to apply for the Ed Choice vouchers. And some of the schools of choice have increased their tuition by just about the amount of the vouchers so that they could increase tuition, which again increases revenue and doesn't hurt the families because they now have a voucher to help cover some of that increased tuition. So as you can see by this graph, it is not low-income families escaping failing schools, and definitely not BBHCSD because number one, we're not a failing school. We're one of the top school districts in the state of Ohio. But you can see the blue bar would be a low-income families choosing an Ed Voucher scholarship, or voucher, sorry. The orange bar is the Ed Choice expansion, which families upwards of 450% above the poverty line, I think is how it's stated, are eligible. And you can look at those percentages of increase at the top. So this is our data, not state, not national, not the neighbors around us, it's us. So how can our community help? How can our Board of Education help? We already as a district have advocacy groups like OSBA, VASA, OASBO, and other education organizations that we're members of, active members of. You can contact your legislators. We put them down there, our 2 senators and 2 representatives that cover our school district. Depending on if you're Brecksville or Broadview Heights, doesn't matter which one you live in, you can send it to all 4. I encourage you to. Stay informed, follow the budget developments of the timeline that Craig showed earlier. And probably the most important is spread awareness. Spread awareness to your neighbors, to your friends, to your colleagues, to anyone you come in contact, that this is a topic that every stakeholder, every community member in Brecksville and Broadview Heights should be paying attention to, because depending on where the cards fall in the end, and I'm being hopeful of where they fall in the end, it is going to affect each and every person that owns property in our cities. So their contact information is there. I'm happy to report that many of us on the Board of Education, Craig, as treasurer, myself, superintendent, have already reached out to many of them and have gotten feedback from a couple of them. Mike Davila, I have met with once. We have another meeting coming up next week in person. Phil Robinson has a meeting coming up in person with the superintendents of the area that he represents. So they are actively asking for our feedback. And what I would tell you is those representatives and senators have a tough job. Mm-hmm. People will say to me all the time, Jeff, you got a tough job as superintendent. Those individuals have a tough job. And it does us no favors to be degrading, to attack, or whatever. When we reach out to them, it should be in an effort to educate them, to know how it affects BBH. Because they represent many different communities, many different school systems, and it's telling the great story of public education and how they need to continue to fund and support public education. And that should be our message. And with that, on part of the agenda, I have an email that I've taken the liberty to draft that would go out to our community, expressing the importance of reaching out to our representatives, and a message similar to what the PSO had put together, if you'd seen some of their posts on social media. So this email would hit all of our inboxes this evening. I know the Board of Education, we've had individual conversations, we've been reading all of it, but this is the final draft. It announces the coffee chat tomorrow morning. We'll plug for that. We're at the coffee club tomorrow at 9 a.m. And it talks about spring break, and then it goes into how to go about contacting your representatives. So with that, I'll step down off my soapbox.
So let me just try to summarize all of that. And I like doing AI thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the key takeaway for our community is that the state budget is under development right now. So Nothing is locked in yet. And what we're seeing is a trajectory where the state has been shifting more of the limited resources of the state into the voucher program and beginning to starve public education. And if that trend line actually continues, if it comes to fruition, ultimately the taxpayer, the local taxpayer, will have to bear the burden, because as funds dry up for local school districts, they need to go back to their voters to plug the gap, as well as address, economics in terms of, watching your expenses and whatnot. That's always something we do on a continuous basis. But the takeaway here is outreach to our state representatives to help influence them in this process. So as Jeff mentioned, Jeff and Craig and the board have all done outreach to our state representatives. This email that's going to go out is basically a recruitment for our community so that they are aware of what's going on and they can enter into the effort to try to inform our state legislatures that it would be to our benefit, to our district's benefit, if they, in their budget, would fully fund the Fair School Funding Plan, which means taking base cost. I know there's a lot of wonky, details in their base costs and a lot of other things, because basically they're not funding it to the level that it was designed to be funded to. So, that Governor DeWine is saying it's fully funded, but, there was kind of a big switch because the cost basis isn't there. So, that's kind of what we're dealing with. So I'm going to throw it back to the board and ask if the board has any questions on this topic, and also if everyone is okay with sending out this communication, to help inform our public and our community and encourage them to let their voice be heard.
I think throughout this particular year that I've been part of the Board of Education, and even before this, I know it's no secret that I have been aware and tried to make others aware of the dangers of what vouchers are doing to our public school district. And it began with the Cupp-Patterson bill, which was a committee of educators that were from both sides of the aisle, who came up with really the first acceptable, workable plan on funding public education as it is now. And then what has happened is that it's become bastardized in a way that doesn't reflect anything that Cupp-Patterson managed to put together. And I think that there would be, I hope that somehow we can consider joining our neighbors in Independence, who just joined the Vouchers Hurt Ohio lawsuit that was brought by Bill Phillips, who happened to be the driving force behind Cupp-Patterson. He argued in front of the Supreme Court 3 different times to make public school funding constitutional, which it had not been, and won. He won the case, but the legislators decided not to abide by the rulings of the Supreme Court. And so luckily, he's one of those dogs with a pork chop. He's not going to let it go. And he didn't, and we got the Cupp-Patterson bill, and all of us in public education were very happy that this had come to fruition. And as I said, that has not, unfortunately, borne the fruits of what it had promised. And I would really encourage us in terms of how we can help. We as a district can help by joining the Vouchers Hurt Ohio lawsuit. And I had discussed this a couple of Board of Education meetings ago, and I'm hoping that perhaps we can take this issue up again at the next Board of Education meeting and take a vote to see if we should join the 300 plus schools that have now joined Vouchers Hurt Ohio.
So just to frame it in, there's 2 things we can give direction on this evening. One is the communication that is teed up to go out. just to make sure we're all in support of sending it out to our community. And we can have a second conversation on this Falcons Herd Ohio lawsuit, which I know has come before the board. Has discussed this at least 3 times since I've been on the board. And so we can tee it up and have another discussion and see if there's any, each time that the majority has preferred to not join that lawsuit. So we can have another quick conversation on the topic, see if there's movement there. If there is, then, you know, we can give new guidance. If there's not, then we stay the course. So let's tackle the first part, which is the communication that we have teed up, just to make sure the board, it's not a resolution that we need to vote on. This is just the board giving Jeff guidance on, do we want this to go out? And so maybe if the rest of the board could offer your feedback. I'm supportive of it. I think it makes sense. As I mentioned, Jeff and Craig and the board have reached out to these state representatives. I think it's the more the merrier. I personally think it's the most proactive thing that we can do as a community, is to advocate for our district and advocate for public education, so that we don't end up, because eventually we will be going back to the voters for an operating levy somewhere down the road. That timeline will be shorter if this trend of the state continues, where they start starving public education, and also in terms of shifting some of those limited resources into the voucher program.
I greatly appreciate the fact that you included the names of the representatives. I think if there's ever anything that gets in the way of our becoming participatory, it's because we don't know who to participate to.
Full credit goes to Mr. Dosen. I had the link to look up your representative. He suggested putting a name, so full credit to Mr. Dosen on that one.
That was very helpful. I think that
Less friction.
community will really respect that and utilize it, I hope.
First of all, I want to say thank you to both of you for the presentation that you put together. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for your advocacy constantly for BBH and the banner that hangs over it. It's a hard conversation for me to have, because it's a knife twisting in my gut and in my chest at all times. As President Dosen has said, as if public education it starts starving. It's starving. It's starving. What is happening is trying to gut public education as we know it. I am in support of the work that you've done to put this communication out, and I hope the community reads this, processes it, and decides to take action. This will hurt our community. Our schools are the beating heart of this community, and have been. We do need to take action. Our legislators need to know, fund our schools. Fund our schools. These are the future doctors. These are the future teachers. These are the future leaders of our society. Fund our schools. Fund our schools for our kids. I'm in support.
I want to second what Tish said. Thank you so much for the presentation. It's really, really helpful. I actually went to the Ohio School Board Association Legislative Conference yesterday. It was very interesting. I will be honest to say it was actually a bit discouraging. There were 3 legislators who are on the State Education Committee who spoke. 2 of them actually used the words return on investment and said that they're not getting a good return on investment for the state tax dollars. I'm not quite sure how that factors into kids, but that was actually the language that was used.
I invite them to
yesterday.
come here and look at their return on investment.
Right. But I don't know how you use return on investment with children, but it was actually used. The other word on the street at the conference was that our former House Speaker, now State Senator Matt Huffman, apparently a significant goal of his is he wants to bolster flagging enrollment at Ohio's Catholic schools. So that's part of what's going on here. I did get to meet with Representative. I didn't get to meet with Representative Davila at the last minute, but I did speak with his aide. He was super helpful. He's having office hours on March 29th at his office in Strongsville. He's open 9 to 1. I can't be there, but both Representative Davila's aide, and then I did have a meeting with Representative Robinson, who was very, very helpful. And they basically said they want to hear testimony. So if anybody in the district, according to Representative Robinson, they've changed the process this session. So they know at the very last minute when testimony is going to be needed. He said it'll either be April 1st or 2nd or April 8th or 9th. So if people want to maybe put that on their calendars. I know it's really hard if you can't plan. Not to burden you anymore, because I know you guys are very busy. He did say hearing from the treasurers and the superintendents is going to be a really important part of that process. So anyway, thanks for doing this. I fully support the communication. And I'm also think that addressing it in the litigation that's pending which is about the constitutionality of these vouchers would be helpful too. So that's where I stand.
And yeah, I'm in support of the email going out, and I've talked about it at PSO, at high school PSO, elementary school PSO, and then I'll talk about it tomorrow at middle school PSO, and then we discussed it at PSO council. And our community people want this information. They want to know how they can help. So I appreciate you putting it together, putting the names in and giving people the information because, and like you said, Mark, it is confusing too, to say we want to fully fund the plan, but there's base costs and there's guarantees. So I appreciate you laying it out in a succinct way that people can read and understand, and they can formulate their own message. People do want to do that. So I think this is needed and important.
Well, it will go out tonight. It will go out very soon. And also, if people want more information in person and want to dig deeper, we'll be at the coffee chat tomorrow. Wrestle at the coffee club in Broadview Heights at 9 a.m. But thank you for the comments, and it's what we need to do.
Okay, so the second part, just to wrap this topic up, was it's the Vouchers Hurt Ohio lawsuit. So there's a lawsuit that has been going on for how many years? It's been going on for a number of years. A number of districts have joined it, and that this is challenging the voucher program in Ohio is unconstitutional. And so this board has had multiple conversations of this topic about, do we want to join or should we join or should we not? There is a small cost to join. Do you recall it's per student? Is it like $3 or
$2?
$2 per student?
$7,000
per year.
per year.
Right? So it would cost our district about $7,000 a year to join the lawsuit. In the past, when the board has discussed this, there hasn't been a majority that wanted to go forward and join the lawsuit. I'll just tee it up and say I've been one of them that has not viewed the lawsuit as something that we need to join because it's happening with or without us. I haven't moved in my thinking. That lawsuit is still going to go forward. I don't think we need to spend $7,000 to have our name on it. I think what would be much more impactful is what we're doing, which is contact our state representatives and let them know how we feel. Let them know that we want the Fair School Funds plan to be fully funded at current cost levels. I think that is going to be the biggest thing to move the needle, and the court battle is going to happen. That thing, it could get solved and decided, or it could stay in the system for many more years. So anyway, I've not shifted. I'm fine with staying on the sideline, letting that lawsuit unfold, and instead redirect our efforts to getting people to contact state legislators. So I'll throw it up to the rest of the board. We'll see where the board is at.
I mean, I'll just weigh in and say that my thinking on it has changed and only since we discussed it in August. Because like two things I think that happened. In December during the lame duck session, the legislature tried to take up some legislation to make more accountability for vouchers. And that had bipartisan support. And I thought, that's great. That would be wonderful. Nothing happened with it. I think it's sitting in committee at the House. So that was really frustrating to see that there's bipartisan support to have more accountability, to have more restrictions on this money. And it's just nothing is being done at the legislative level. And then obviously with the budget now, I feel I'm talking to people in our community and I'm explaining to them about the challenges we're facing with public education, with the funding. Here's what's going on with the budget. This budget decreases money for us in public schools and it increases vouchers. That is making our community upset when I talk to people, and it's difficult for me to talk to people and say, these vouchers, this program isn't good and we need public education to be funded. But I won't vote to join the voucher lawsuit. So that's what is making me change my thinking about it, because it's hard for me to ask people to advocate for us. It's hard for me to explain these programs but then say, but we won't join in and say that they're not correct or they're not wrong. So I know I agree with you, Mark, there is a cost and the lawsuit will just go through without us. I mean, I think at this point, we're registering our disapproval. And I know it costs $7,000 to do that, but yeah, it's just a difficult thing when I'm talking with people in our community, and this is upsetting to them to hear that money is being taken away from our public schools and given other places. So I think it's just a natural extension of what we've been talking about, and that I would have liked to have seen something happen with this program from our legislators. It seems like there is some willingness to do it, to kind of rein in and put more restrictions on vouchers. And I haven't seen it, and I don't know what else to do. I agree. I think reaching out to legislators over the budget and explaining these issues and hearing from us is important. This is one more thing we can do. It's just another level that we can get to express that this is what's going on and this is what we need to happen. So that's all I have to say about it.
Others?
So when we talked about it the last time, we did not have a clearer vision yet. I think we all knew where the budget was going, the state, I think we all knew to a certain extent that it wasn't going to be good, but we didn't have all the details. And when we talked about it the last time, I was like, kind of on board with you, Mark, right? Like the lawsuit's going forward, no matter what, whether we're a part of it or not. I was leery of investing, our taxpayers' dollars into a lawsuit, not knowing when the end could be, where the lawsuit's going. Will there be more money that's needed? Will we have to up even more taxpayer money for it? So that's really, and I had spoken to community members that were, kind of on the fence, why would we need to join it? Since then, the gutting has just continued. And I think, we know where this is headed. Furthermore, private schools are now getting public dollars. And I agree with our superintendent that every parent should have the right to choose for their child if they're able to. But when you take, as a private institution, you take public dollars, you become an ad hoc public institution that should be held to the same accountability as our public schools. And they're not. And if we don't stand up with every measure that we can to say that this is not okay, then at some point you have to say, are we failing in our endeavor? So my take on joining the voucher lawsuit has changed. And if we are going to take an action on it, I would choose to join at this time.
Eva, I'm assuming your position is not changed.
It has not changed one bit. And in fact, when an entity removes $1 billion from public education in 1 year and then refuses to be more transparent, as our superintendent said, refuses to be accountable. It's unacceptable to me as a taxpayer, and it should be unacceptable to any taxpayer whose money has been invested in public education, not vouchers. And I do absolutely agree with our superintendent that we have every right to send our children to any school that would meet our needs, but not using public education funding. So that's it.
Everyone else was so eloquent. I will not add.
So a couple details, I guess, leaving tonight's meeting. What will happen is Craig and I will prepare a resolution to be considered at the next meeting for us to put before the board. Couple clarifying things. There have been over 300 school districts who have joined this lawsuit, but there aren't currently 300 joined. And why I bring that point up is Craig and I both have had concerns like, well, how long does this go and how much of an investment is this? This isn't, it's not Hotel California. You don't check in and never check out. If we go in, if it doesn't go the way we want, or there are changes that have been made that we feel as though it's trending in a different way, we can join, we can choose not to join from year to year. So we will keep a close eye on that. It was to go to court in November and it was kicked, and now it's April. So, you know, Greg and I in our conversations, and I can speak for him, but we had talked about, well, it'd be nice to see it finally go and then we could join as well. It is going, but at the same time, we want to make sure that they have the funds to be able to, if they're going to fight, to continue the fight. So we will watch the actions of the group very closely and the lawsuit very closely and continue to keep the board updated. And like I said, we'll prepare a resolution for you to consider next month.
Jeff, can we structure the resolution so that it's an annual resolution, assuming everyone would be okay with that? That way the board each year can review, like, where are we at with this? Do we want to continue or do we?
Yep. And to be accountable to our communities too, I think it's important, because from year to year, the makeup of the board, as well as, you know, hopefully not these two seats, but, you know, does change from time to time. So we want to make sure that we give the flexibility to whoever's representing our communities.
Yeah, I agree about redoing it every year and just keeping watch on what's happening. And if, like you said, if we felt like something changes and it's trending in a direction that we're more comfortable with, we can be one of those districts that was on and then they came off. So like you said, there's a lot of districts that have done that for whatever reason, you know, because the board changes over, because direction changes over, they get new feedback from the community, or they just feel less comfortable with the lawsuit. So yeah, I think we should revisit it every year.
And I think it's important to understand too, and I think each one of you have echoed it. This isn't a vote against choice, right? Choice is wonderful and everybody deserves choice. This is the unconstitutionality of public funds going to private entities with zero transparency and accountability.
Well, and I want to thank everybody for the discussion, the energy, the passion. You know, it really comes through. But I also just want to caution everyone to recognize that we in no way are casting any negative aspersions on private schools and the job that they do. Not at all. It is, you know, they are playing by the rules. What we're saying is the state makes the rules and the rules are not the same. So you are plugging into a public school board meeting right now. You will never see one of these at a private school at this level of transparency. We have to do all of our business in the open. We have Ohio sunshine laws we have to adhere to, which is why Mr. Harrison talked about you can get all of his emails. I mean, and so really? Same thing is, you know, with testing and with financial reporting and with compliance to unfunded mandates, the rules are all different. And that's okay. The state teed it up that way. But, you know, what we're talking about is, you know, by shifting more and more taxpayer money into private schools don't have the same rules they have to follow as we do. And as Jeff said, we're willing to compete too, but let's have a level playing field. So that there's no negativity to any private schools, right? They're all great. It's just about our state legislature. And, you know, it is a zero-sum game. all the money that you funnel into vouchers means there's less money to funnel back to the public or to other priorities for that matter. So this is where our community can have their voices heard. And if you're a voice that is like, I think the voucher system is fantastic, go ahead, reach out to the legislators and let them know that too. It's public, they're public representatives. So they need to hear our voice and kind of see where it falls.
Well
Thank you.
said, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay,
Oh, you know.
so we are going to move on to item 5, treasurer's communication. I'm going to turn it over to Greg.
Well, let's talk about another fun subject. More financial information. Okay, so we have the month of February data here in front of you. Oh gosh, why do they just always have things for us to look at? There we go. All right, so in February, I feel like the county has made a little liar out of me. They told us we were going to get more money than we did because we were, if you recall, back in January, they were shorted us about $1 million, a little over $1 million in our tax advances due to some timing issues and whatnot. And then they said, well, we're going to make up for it for you in February. That didn't happen. We have gotten all of the money as of last week. And we're looking at right now into some delinquencies. We've missed our mark as far as I can tell on the forecast by just a couple $100,000. But I also got an email prior to this meeting a couple hours ago that there are many treasurers in Cuyahoga County that are questioning and they're seeing a very large uptick in delinquencies, which may be a signal of the economy. We don't know, but I've requested all of our delinquencies, which have normally come out. They've just not been released yet. So the money has been received though, just not in their time frame. But in February, they did not necessarily deliver. So you'll see we brought in $6.1 million in tax revenue, $357,000 in state revenue, and a total of, what is that, $6.7 million for total revenues. When we look at our expenditures, anything you see here in red is technically considered just a little bit outside right now of the ideal range, which is, I'll zoom in there for you, 67%, right? So we're still kind of coming off of this 3-pay month. So this is normal. We are doing very well in terms of what we're, our benefits, purchase services, and supplies at this point. They are trending, I would say, on mark or just slightly below when we look at total expenditures. So when we look over here, where we compare in blue, which is our forecasted revenue amount, and then where we are projecting at this point as of the end of February, we are just a little bit under or unfavorable in the source of revenues. And then we look on expenditures, though, we are slightly better than what we planned. So we forecasted a deficit of $1 million this year, and right now we're looking at about $785,000. So a little bit better, but still a deficit spend at the moment, at least what is projected. Zoom back out a little bit. So let's look at how we compared from last year a little bit. When we look at just a comparison from last February, this is where you can really see that difference of this is how much revenue we received in total. And all the other expenditures were, as you see here in number 2, all other revenues remain consistent from last year. This is a $6 million difference of what we received in the prior year at the same time from tax revenue. So it just shows you that it can, our revenue stream can fluctuate tremendously from year to year, and this was all due to the real estate taxes. Again, that money has all come in with the exception of some which we're digging into, but
Shouldn't the real estate tax have been higher this year?
in general, they are in total, but yeah, not, it's just, this is how they were advanced in as people were paying their bills. But what happened was normally they will release the majority of the advanced dollars to us, and this year they took a smaller percentage. So that's why we got less. But anyway, it does technically affect our interest and things like that we would have earned though, because we had to wait another month to get all that money. So it just hit, like I said, last week. When we look on the expenditure front, very, very consistent to the year prior, when we actually a little bit less in total expenditures from last year. Salaries and benefits were slightly higher, which we would expect due to salary increases, step increases, and whatnot. Purchase services and supplies were down a little bit, so our overall expenditures were less, but not by much. That's a pretty close marker. Now you can also see here when we look at fiscal year to date, this shows you in green how much we had received at this same time at the end of February last year and where we're sitting this year. And then these were the expenditures from last year as a total from July to current. And then you can see where we are here. Again, over $1 million, or around $1 million of that increase in purple is due to the retirement, largest severance, as well as the retirement incentive. So, and this is, I'll just go through quickly, but this was taking that same report, plugging it in through AI, just to like take a quick look of what it does for us. It kind of summarizes it, makes it a little bit more visual. So this is all the same information, but this was the second month that I used it, and I wanted to just, it was just a little bit different. Like it gave me different charts, different graphs, but it's really fascinating to see how it does that. So, and to put things in perspective, I mean, Jeff and I worked on an outline for the presentation you saw earlier. I don't want to give away the goods, but I mean, I put that into the AI platform and it created that in about 20 seconds.
The
And
outline.
we edited it, we checked it, we did all that stuff today, but it just saves you an incredible amount of time when you're putting presentations together.
Were there many errors?
No, and it's fascinating how it like takes what we put on an outline and kind of just makes it even more clear.
Brings in more context.
Yeah, brings in more context. It's wild. So I mean, again, when you're using AI, you always need to check things, right, Dr. Martin?
Are only as good as the inputs that get intelligent people.
Is that a
Well, thanks.
Did he compliment us?
He did. Oh, okay, okay. Great, thanks. So again, a little more visual. The other thing that I'm also excited about is that Elasbo is putting together some tools as well for treasurers, not necessarily on the AI front, but so there may be some other reports I'll share with you over the next couple of months that we can take a look at. Any questions about where we stand today? And then next for you here is the cash position or annual spending plan, which those are things that you probably won't see from those other schools we were talking about earlier. So you can see where the cash is in all of our different accounts and funds that we have throughout the school district and what that looks like.
Have you tried putting that into AI?
Not yet.
I wonder if it could make that more interesting.
Right. I maybe could.
Can you put
I
the
mean,
check register in it into AI?
That's what I should try next month.
I mean, is anyone a little nervous about giving him any other tools to create reports? I mean, our board meetings will have to go even longer.
No, no.
All right, moving along. Item 6, community communications, hearing of the public. Does anybody wish to be heard this evening? If you do, you have to fill out a card. Nobody?
Don't have any.
Okay, so I'll dispense with reading that narrative. We'll move on to item 7, consent agenda. Item A, resolve to approve certified personnel recommendations. Item B, resolve to approve classified personnel recommendations. Item C, resolve to approve supplemental personnel recommendations. Item D, resolve to approve the following firm for legal counsel representation during 2025. Item E, resolve to approve the Cuyahoga County Community College CCP MOU for the 2025-2026 school year. Item F, resolve to approve the check register and bank reconciliation as attached for February 2025. Item G, resolve to accept donations as presented. Item H, resolve to approve the minutes from the February 12th, 2025 regular board meeting as attached. Item I, resolve to approve superintendent's consent items A through H. May I have a motion?
So moved.
So moving down through our routine matters, the first one, certified recommendations. So you're going to see on here a few unpaid leave requests that are coming in. And while we're on this, I just want to point out or make the note that we currently, I believe, are up to 14 retirements in our school district this year.
Wow.
We had 14 last year, but we had offered an incentive. The retirement system changed a little bit to some people's benefits. So all of a sudden we went from a hiring season that we thought we would be twiddling our thumbs to hiring 14.
I think 14 is classified and certified though.
Yeah, it's classified and
Yeah,
certified.
but there's
That's
still
right,
9.
14 instead across the district.
Okay, yeah.
So, so we have some hiring to do, which is always an exciting thing. It's one of the most important things we do. So we will be on that track right after spring break. So that is the certified. Moving over to classified. We do have one retirement on here that I would point out. Michelle Moore, a special education assistant at the high school, is retiring after 22 years of service. At 22 years of service as a special education assistant, she deserves a badge of honor and has been a wonderful employee for us, and we wish her all the best in retirement. On here, we have some substitutes helping fill some of the positions as our recommendation. Supplemental, I do want to point out and be crystal clear. I did add a name to this, so I want to make sure that I bring it to all of your attention. And it's high school assistant track coach on here, and it was, where'd we go? I'm looking at the wrong one. I gotta get to the track. It helps. Brian Smith. Brian Smith stepped up to fill a position, and if as a former athletic director, anytime somebody volunteers or steps up to fill a position, I want to hurry up and get them approved before they change their mind. Not saying Brian would change his mind, but I want to just be clear that from what you reviewed earlier as a board, that he was an ad. So just want to make sure nobody's related or has anything that we need to pull this as a separate agenda item. I apologize for doing that, but I felt as though it was best with the season starting to get him approved tonight. So that's the only change to it from what you had viewed earlier in the week.
He'll be great.
The next item, as you're kind of cruising there, just adding another law firm to our slate of
We're athletic workers.
They have one athletic worker, that's all.
the next item, which is D, representation. We're adding a legal counsel to our slate of available ones. This has to do with an employment change with someone who represents us and has a long history with our school district, that we want to make sure that that person is available to continue some of the things that we're involved with. Much of it revolves around special ed. So having the history and knowledge of the years is very important to us. So that's why we're approving one at this time. We have a CCP MOU with Tri-C.
One of those very transparent documents, the check register, which I will not read tonight, but you can see where all the tax dollars do go if you'd like to dig into all of those, as well as our bank reconciliation to show that we balanced our book to our bank every month. We do have some donations to, I need to zoom out just
The donations, as Craig's bringing it up, I want to point out the first one, Superior Industrial Insulation. They donated over $5,000 worth of fluorescent jackets and vests for the dismissal teams. Mr. Hartland was modeling one yesterday. It's a very nice winter raincoat, highly fluorescent. So we thank them for this donation, helping keep our employees safe while they're working in the parking lots.
Is that just at the elementary school visit? All the buildings they're going to use it at?
My understanding is just at the elementary.
Okay.
their dismissal team's very large.
Yeah, no, that'll be nice. I always see them standing out there in their coats and their umbrellas, and so it'd be nice for them to have.
Yeah, so lots of donations this month. Lots for lacrosse. Okay. Oops, one more. And then just the minutes from last month's meeting, which are attached. Any questions?
I do have a question, related to assistants, educational assistants in the district. We have our special education assistants and then educational assistants. Can you give just an example of, those educational assistants, what roles they fill?
The educational assistants?
Yeah, like special education obviously is
Right.
focused on our students. with
Educational
special education.
assistants are going to be those extra hands in the building. They're going to help with like lunch duty and recess and help teachers in classrooms not related to special ed services. A lot of times you will see at the elementary, for example, when you pull up in the morning, drop your child off, many of the individuals along the curb are educational assistants. Sometimes they're answering phones. Sometimes they're just doing things to keep the building running. You would almost think that they are part of the teaching staff at times, that they're intimately involved with many of our students.
Any other comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Ms. Wykowski,
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item 8, superintendent's recommendations. Item A, resolve to adopt new revised board policies, final reading. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So here's our final read for many of the policies due to new legislation in the state of Ohio. Ones here that have been of special attention, I will say, have been things such as the release time for religious instruction during the school day policy, as well as the bathroom policy. And then also the last one that is of notoriety, I guess, we have Parents' Bill of Rights. These are all policies that are stemming from changes in legislation. Policy creation and implementation is something that we work on all the time. And the policy itself isn't meant to solve every possible situation that could arise. With policy, you also need to be very careful that you don't paint yourself in the corner and open yourself up for more litigation. These policies, I don't sit in my office and just create these policies. We work with Neola, who has a whole team of lawyers who research inside and out and give us recommendations that we as a superintendent and administrative team, as well as the Board of Education, make choices. And we've made the appropriate choices that best fit BBHCSD, and that's what we have here today. I have had community input between Read 1 and Read 2, and very good input. And many of those things were considered. Some of them were implemented in our policy and others were not because I think it's a bad idea. But again, we have to be careful with policy not to put us in a situation where it could lead to more litigation. That's not the idea. And then later on this agenda, you'll see something called administrative guidelines. Administrative guidelines are basically a book of guidelines that we use administratively to implement policy. Those only require one read. It's just an approval. So that's later in, and it's some of those admin guidelines pertain to the policies that are in item A.
Any comments or questions?
So which policies changed between the first and second reading? I know you mentioned two. Sorry, you gotta put on your glasses.
No, I know, it's terrible.
You mentioned two last time that you were just adjusting the wording around.
Yep. So policies that were updated per the discussion of our last board meeting were 2430.02 and 2431. So instead of just reading you the numbers, I'll tell you that's the participation of community school, STEM school students in extracurricular activities, and then the interscholastic athletics. They both were related to kind of the same thing, and how and who approves students from outside our district to participate in our interscholastic athletics. That's the one mainly that had changed. Those are the only two that have changed since the last meeting as far as the policy themselves.
Okay.
Yep.
Jeff, I have a question about policy 5223. Is this something that this is the release time for religious instruction. Is this something, and it doesn't explicitly state this, that you anticipate families doing on a yearly basis?
Possibly. We don't have this. This release time for religious instruction during the school day really speaks to organizations who would organize this and make it available to our students. Parents and their children, we have excused absences for other religious expression days and things of that nature. That's different from this. This is LifeWise Academy coming to Brexville Broadview Heights wanting to organize religious education during the instructional day. That's what this policy speaks to. And we've put some parameters in here because we had the same policy prior, but it said that we may allow. Legislation said we have to say shall allow. So if we're going to allow it, or if we're forced to allow it, we put some parameters in. When it can happen, how often it can happen, what instructional courses they could miss to participate. So for example, a couple of highlights from this policy is we are saying it can happen for 9 school days per year, once a month, right? That's kind of the idea of 9. It's for a total of 50 minutes each time. 50 minutes, we come with 50 minutes because that's the elementary recess and lunch time. And then the other thing is they can't miss any core instruction. So the only time that a release for religious education organization who would want to partner with us, and I say partner because it would have to be a partnership for the betterment of our students, they can only do it 9 times in a year for a total of 50 minutes each time. And they can only, they have to provide background checks, and they can only take students out of study hall and lunch. I have some strong feelings about this policy. Currently in Brexville Broadview Heights, we have not had to entertain a conversation about this with any organizations. I think that goes back to a couple of factors. It goes back to our relationship as a school district with our faith community. The time that I and other members of our district interact, speak to, and work with faith leaders in our community, and they understand the importance of what we do in a given school day. We only have 177 days to instruct our students. We only have them for upwards of 7 hours a day. Religious education is important to many families, and those opportunities can happen before and after school, like they always have. We've had student groups who are faith-based that happen after school on premises. So it's not that we're trying to stop anyone from having religious education. It's just we have all these mandates and all these accountability measures that we have to meet as a school district. So every minute of instruction is utterly important. The other factor to this is our school district and our community value what we provide and give them. And so they see the importance of their son or daughter being in our classroom, and they don't want them to miss that instruction. So I know there's a lot of passion about this policy throughout the country and in the state of Ohio in particular. It has not been a problem for us, and I don't anticipate it being a problem for us. But we will continue to work with those who want to work with us, and we've put some requirements in place for it. So I'll stop there. I can keep going if you want me.
Other comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Ms. Bykowski.
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item C, resolve to approve special education model policies and procedures resolution as attached. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So this is where I'm just drowning in policy the past month or so. So we just approved policy number 2460, which is a requirement due to legislation that we must, as a district, adopt, either create and or adopt model policies for the delivery of special education. So just about every school district I've talked to says, why would we create our own when the state has model special ed policies that we already follow, and we follow the law? However, when you look at the state's special education model policies, there's 4 things in particular that are above and beyond what's required by law. So if we're going to adopt that policy and we say we're going to look at the state model policies, we will, except 4 items we want to modify. This resolution is stating that publicly, and this is also the resolution that we will submit. Cassie will submit to the state showing that we have adopted a policy to follow model policies, except for these 4 little things. And it is really because it's above and beyond what is legally required. Not saying that some of those things aren't offered or come into play, but we just also don't want to have policy that puts us above and beyond what's required by law. So that's what this resolution is. If you can repeat all that to me, I'll give you a bonus point. That's how policy feels right now.
Any comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer, Ms. Bykowski.
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item E, resolve to approve administrative guideline and form revisions as attached. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So these are just administrative guidelines that go along with some of the policies we adopted. These are the rules that our admin follow to implement policy.
Any comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer.
Yeah.
Ms. Bykowski.
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item G, revised board policy first reading, resolve to adopt revised board policy first reading. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So when we adopted policy back in December, I think it was, from the fall policy update that didn't get to us till October, we had legislative changes that changed some vocabulary essentially in these 2 policies. This is the first read. We'll read it now and we'll approve it at the next meeting. It is really just a change in some vocabulary.
We need to
There's
approve.
no-
I was gonna say, do we?
We don't need a roll
First
call for
reading,
this.
we don't need a roll
No,
call.
I'm sorry, you did not. Off this.
So Craig, how do we do that? Do we just
We'll,
scratch?
we'll just take it off because it's not required.
Okay, moving on to item I, resolve to approve the NEORSD right of entry agreement as attached. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
This is a simple agreement to allow the Northeast Ohio
Regional Sewer
Sewer District all these acronyms that I didn't even know this one. To come onto
Get a
our
bill.
property.
We
What's
get a
that?
bill from.
Oh,
We're
That's
familiar
right.
with it.
We do too.
Yeah.
So this is giving them permission to come onto our property to do some analysis of Chippewa Hills Creek. It's as simple as it is.
Any comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Ms. Kwiatkowski.
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item K, resolve to approve the attached resolution declaring transportation impractical for the 2024-2025 school year. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Quite ironic that this is on this agenda tonight after talking about vouchers, but this is something you see from time to time when we as a district deem of transporting students who are attending private schools impractical. And when we deem it impractical, then it's in payment in lieu of. This used to be roughly a $200 payment to families and now is $600 payment to families. And they're listed the schools that are on there. So in addition to their voucher, they are now getting $600 some to transport their own child to private school.
How many schools does this cover?
This one in particular, I think is just two.
Just two for this
But,
one.
you know, in August, we see a lot of them, but then as, yeah.
Any comments or questions?
What is the, you said it went from 200 to 600. What is that based on? Is that guidelines from the state, what they require, or is it like a share of our transportation?
It is a number that is given by the state. So it's weird that there's a maximum number, which I don't know who would pay the maximum number because it's like upwards of $1,500, but all schools that I know of, at least, they set a state minimum, which is I think $596 is what they do. So it has been going up, but this year, I believe it actually stayed the same. I have no idea what method they use, but they do dictate that.
Any other comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Ms. Kwiatkowski.
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item M. Resolve to approve the high school varsity gymnastics trip proposal as attached. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
This is a retro one. We all know that gymnastics team went to the state championship and did quite successful. So that this is a process that we follow and we ask our coaches to follow in athletic department, just documenting the trip, the expenses of the trip and information. Typically we want it before the trip, but when state championship things that you qualify for, we don't always get it before a board meeting. So this one's retroactive as well as a few others.
Any comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Ms. Kwiatkowski.
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item O. Resolve to approve the high school robotics trip proposal as attached. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Retroactive, did extremely successful. You'll hear about it next month.
Comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Ms. Kwiatkowski,
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item Q. Resolve to approve the high school volleyball team trip proposal as attached. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
This is a trip this summer to a camp. They're going to the University of North Carolina, which is bound to be a wonderful experience for you.
Comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Ms. Kwiatkowski,
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item U. Sorry. S.
Yeah.
Resolve to approve the high school varsity wrestling trip proposal as attached. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Retroactive, you'll meet them next month.
Comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer, Ms. Kwiatkowski,
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item U. Resolve to approve the high school varsity baseball trip proposal as attached. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
The baseball team will be traveling to the tropical city of Cincinnati, March 28th and 30th for their spring trip.
Comments or questions?
We made it really far down the alphabet. We're at V now.
I was thinking the same thing.
I don't know what happens when just go to AA, I guess maybe. Does it? Okay. Probably. Let's not get there.
Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic.
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer.
Yeah.
Ms. Kwiatkowski.
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara.
Yep.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, item passes 5-0. And back to the beginning of the alphabet. Moving on to item Agenda item 9, treasurer's recommendations. Item A, resolve to accept the lowest bid for the bid tabulation and bid evaluation as attached. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So this is for the roof replacement. Here are the results, just so you can show, we can see some of the competitive bidding that we had for the project. We had 6 people submit for this project. It's a pretty sizable roofing project at the middle school that's going to happen this summer. The low bid is here by Ramp Construction for $467,000. But you can see the spread that we had was anywhere from like 5s to 600 to 632. 632 is the highest, I think. Yeah. So this ultimately ended up almost $100,000 under bid than what we projected. So it was good savings at the end of the day. It will allow us to do other permanent improvement projects.
Any comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelick,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer.
Yeah.
Spikowski.
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara.
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item C. Resolve to approve the full resolution as attached, authorizing the filling of an original complaint against the valuation of real property pursuant to ORC section 5715.19, permanent parcel number 605140006. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So this is part of the requirements of House Bill 126. So one of our legal firms monitors property valuations and recommends one time a year this is for tax year 24, I believe, where we can file a complaint due to the fact that that property is valued lower than what we believe it should be valued at and has to meet certain thresholds. So it does require, since House Bill 126, that the Board of Education passes a resolution in public that they are going to file a complaint with the county. And then prior to this board meeting, we have to send certified mail notifying the property owners that we are going to file a complaint so that they can appear at the board meeting if they would like to. So those are the requirements that we have. This is one of 2 properties that we are bringing to you. There were 3 total we looked at, but only 2 we decided that would make the most sense. So this is one of 2 for tonight, but technically routine business. Most of these, I believe both of these are at $1 million or more in valuation of commercial property, that if we would win, we would get those tax dollars on class 2 property taxes, sorry.
So Craig, if these are authorized this evening, a lawsuit's going to get filed sometime in the near term.
So it's not a lawsuit. This goes in front of the commission, and then they make a determination. They can appeal the determination of the Board of Revision and all those things. So it depends. A lot of times they'll take usually the ones we file, we've been successful in because we evaluate that in terms of what is the legal cost of this and then what is the benefit to the district. So normally these resolve themselves pretty easily because there's such a huge difference in valuation, and it's usually based off of a sale. So it's like they're saying it's only worth 1.9, but they just sold it for 3.5 million. I don't know if those are the right numbers, but it's something that big. And so it's like they'll look at the sale and say, well, this needs to be updated, is usually what happens, unless they can provide other evidence contrary to that.
And both of these are based off a sale, it looked like, right?
Yeah. Those are the ones where they're more sure bets to do that. Because if you have to go into value, if we have to do like an evaluation of a property, it can be very costly. So we really have to make sure we're doing that, because it could be like upwards of $8,000 to $10,000 for us to pay to get evaluation and to do all of those things. So we try to evaluate the cost benefit analysis.
Other comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelick,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer, Spikowski,
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item E, resolve to approve the full resolution as attached, authorizing the filing of an original complaint against the valuation of real property pursuant to ORC section 5715.19, permanent parcel number 583040031. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Same thing, just different property.
Comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelick,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Spikowski,
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item 10, enter into executive session. Item A, resolve to enter into executive session for the consideration of the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official per Ohio Revised Code 121.22. Item A, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Ms. Kwiatkowski.
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, so we'll be in executive session. After we come out, we're just going to adjourn the meeting, so there'll be no more business conducted this evening. Thank you all for joining us. Have a good evening.
My previous experience.
Yeah.
Falls is the best.
Okay, the board exited executive session at 8:24 PM. Moving on to item 11, announcements. The next regular meeting of the Board of Education is scheduled for April 16th at 6 PM. Item D, resolve to adjourn the meeting. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Ms. Kwiatkowski.
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara.
Yes.
Yes, the meeting is now adjourned. Everyone have a great evening and a great next month. Spring break. Yes.